Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome back, everyone, to another explainer. Today, we're looking at something that is literally going to be a game changer for all my fellow B4X developers out there. We are unpacking the B4XDaisyToggleGroup component. Now, if you've ever spent hours, manually aligning switches, calculating layout gaps, or just wrestling with custom UI boilerplate just to get a decent-looking settings page, well, this is the ultimate time-saving solution. We're going to break down exactly how this component takes you from stunning, out-of-the-box visuals straight down to the rock-solid underlying code. Let's get right into it. So, here's our quick roadmap for this explainer. First up, we'll meet the Daisy Toggle Group. Then, we'll explore its visual flexibility and styling. After that, we'll jump straight into configuring the designer properties, followed by the programmatic API. And finally, we'll wrap up with handling user events. All right, part 1, meet the Daisy Toggle Group and its out-of-the-box polish. When it comes to UI components, I always say seeing is believing, right? You need to know exactly what kind of polish you're getting right out of the box before you commit to using it. And this brilliantly illustrates the immediate visual payoff of this component. Just look at the basic vertical stack layout. It's a super clean setup for things like notification channels, email, SMS, push notifications. Notice that subtle outline and that really neat select notification channels legend just perfectly bridging the border. It looks so sharp. Then right below that, we've got the labels left toggle right layout. This one's great for privacy options. The labels are perfectly flush left, and those vibrant green toggles perfectly aligned to the right. Getting that exact alignment manually is usually, well, a complete headache, but here it's just a built-in configuration. Boom, done. Moving on to part 2, visual flexibility and styling. Basically, scaling to your needs. Sure, it's one thing to have a really good-looking default, but obviously, your app is unique. We all know manual UI math and pixel-pushing alignment are huge pain points. But what's really interesting here is how this component proves its massive flexibility. Take a look at the size scaling. We've got an extra small size, maybe for debug logging, and a large size for something like auto-sync options. But did you catch the text size of the legend? It automatically couples with the toggle size. So when the toggles get bigger, the legend size automatically adapts to match. No extra coding required, it just works. Then, checking out the inset style and colors override, instead of that default outline, we've got this visually distinct soft green inset background with custom green borders and text. It's perfectly tailored for something like an accepts terms section. It just goes to show how easily you can completely break out of the default theme to match your specific branding. Okay, on to part 3, configuring designer properties and why there's absolutely no boilerplate required. Now, you might be wondering, how much setup code am I actually going to need to achieve all these different visual styles? Well, the beautiful answer is virtually none. Seriously. Let's look at how this is handled in the B4X designer. These are just a handful of the really impactful properties you can tweak right inside the visual interface. You can switch your border style from outline to ghost or inset with just a simple drop-down. But I gotta say, the feature I absolutely love here is auto height. By just setting auto height to true, the component automatically grows to fit whatever content you throw at it. For us, that means fewer layout bugs, no clipping text, and literally zero manual resizing calculations when your app runs on a completely different device. You also get easy toggles for things like rounded corners, drop shadows, custom background colors. Oh, and whether you want your layout direction to be vertical or horizontal, it is all done visually. A real time saver. And hey, while we're on the topic of the designer, I absolutely have to highlight the item spec property. Talk about a massive workflow accelerator. Basically, it's a pipe and colon separated string property that lets you rapidly define your toggle items without ever leaving the visual designer. Think about it. If you have a static list of settings, maybe something simple like low, medium, and high, you don't need to write a single add item method in your code. None. You just type your item IDs and display text right into the item spec property and boom, the component populates itself. It just completely wipes out all that unnecessary boilerplate from your initialization logic. Which brings us to part 4, the programmatic API, where you get total code control. Let's be real, a UI component is really only as good as its programmatic control. The visual designer is fantastic for static setup, sure, but our modern apps are highly dynamic. So you can kind of think of the programmatic API as a story with 3 very clear phases. Phase 1, initializing the view and establishing your event callbacks. Phase 2 is the setup. This is where you're dynamically adding items using add item, or maybe passing an entire map of items using set items. And finally, phase 3 is reading that data back when the user actually interacts with it, using methods like getChecked or getSelectedIDs. It's just a very logical, structured flow. Makes your code incredibly readable. These essential methods give you some highly granular control. Add item simply passes an internal ID along with the visual text. And if you ever need to refresh a list from a database, no problem. Just call clear items and toss in your new data. Honestly, managing state is wonderfully simple here too. You can pass a list of IDs straight to selected IDs, or if you want to be even faster, use set checked. With that, you just pass a semicolon delimited string of IDs, like apples, bananas, oranges, and it instantly flips multiple toggles on all at once. And of course, you still have your direct check item and uncheck item methods if you just want to target specific toggles by their ID.
Okay, so we've got the visuals totally nailed down, and we know we can dynamically generate our lists in code. But this raises a pretty pivotal question, doesn't it? The UI looks great, sure, but how does our app actually know what the user just clicked? How are we supposed to respond to that interaction?
That leads us perfectly into part 5, handling user events and capturing that interaction. This right here is where we connect that beautiful UI component back to our app's core logic. So the crucial point here is understanding the 2 primary events we have available. The component essentially gives you exactly what you need, so you can decide which event actually fits your app's logic best. First up, we have the item changed event. This one fires whenever a single toggle is clicked. It passes you the specific ID of the item, its text, and a Boolean telling you if it's now checked or unchecked. This is absolutely perfect for instantaneous granular actions. Think of like immediately saving a single privacy preference right to your database. On the flip side, we have the changed event. This one fires when the group's overall selection changes, and it passes you just a single parameter, a list of all currently selected IDs. This is ideal if, say, you're validating a form and you just want to know everything that's checked right at that very moment, without having to worry about tracking every single individual click. Well, that brings us to the end of this explainer. Before we wrap up, I really want to leave you with this thought to chew on. How much time are you actually wasting right now just building, aligning, and debugging custom toggles in your projects? We've seen today how the B4XDaisyToggleGroup completely handles the visuals, the scaling, the styling, and the programmatic events all wrapped up in one super elegant package. I highly encourage you to rethink those manual UI implementations. Grab this component and elevate your B4X UI today. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, happy coding!